Coming up on this episode of Mike's Mets podcast, we are going to be reviewing the Mets' recent acquisitions for some late-inning bullpen help, and the Mets still have more time to do a little bit more, so we're going to be looking into what else the Mets can do with this limited amount of time before the MLB trade deadline expires. Lots to go over, and we are coming up on the deadline very quickly, so let's get into it. Roll the music. Welcome to Mike's Mets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Peixoto. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Wednesday. It started off not so great with the Mets dropping their third straight game to the San Diego Padres, basically negating everything they had done with the series against the San Francisco Giants. But, best to just move on in our minds, and thankfully we are able to do so thanks to David Stearns and the Mets front office, who made a couple of key acquisitions, acquiring Giants reliever Tyler Rogers and Cardinals closer Ryan Helsley. Two major acquisitions. The Rogers deal was a little unexpected. I don't think anyone really saw that one coming. The Helsley deal had been discussed for some time. It looked like the Mets and the Phillies were going to be haggling over who could acquire Helsley, and ultimately it comes down to the Phillies acquiring Joanne Duran. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation. I've given up trying. From the Minnesota Twins, Phillies get their closer. They desperately needed some late inning relief help, much more so than the Mets did. But with the Mets struggling to find the right balance to kind of get to Edwin Diaz in the ninth inning, and having some overworked relief help in the form of Huascar Razaban and several others, Ryan Stanek and Reed Garrett. Basically, the bullpen's been through the ringer for the first half of the season, and they need some reinforcements here. So they get some big ones, not to mention Gregory Soto, who we saw unsuccessfully make his first appearance earlier this week with the Mets. But I'm not going to hold that against Soto, who came into a tough situation. And probably not a situation that he really thought he was going to be in that early into his Met career. So looking past that, Mets still have a quality lefty in Soto, and now add two righties, one the Submariner and Tyler Rogers. Rogers having an excellent season, 1.80 ERA, 53 appearances this year. He has 38 strikeouts, 4 walks, over 50 innings, and just a terrific ground ball rate, 64% ground ball rate. That's insane. 2.37 FIP, 0.86 WHIP. I mean, the numbers are just like fantastic. This is Rogers' MO for the last 5 years. He has been one of the steadiest hands in baseball, and the guy does it with not a high velocity. I think he'll top out about 90, and that's it on like a good day. So he's usually going to be around that 85, 86 mile an hour fastball range, but it doesn't really matter. He complements it with some great off-speed stuff. The numbers are just terrific, and again, this is a guy who is maybe the best ground ball pitcher in baseball, and that's saying something, but he is really terrific at just keeping the ball on the ground and making sure that he is not getting hit. The barrel percentage rates for him are just are staggering. I mean, he really is an incredible weapon. And having him in there to kind of like hold things down in situations where they really need some help is going to be big. So I'm really looking forward to that move. It cost what appeared to be a lot in the form of Jose Butto, who I will say a fond farewell to. Butto was a solid guy for them, 3.64 ERA this year in 34 appearances, and was capable of doing the long inning relief thing and the spot starter thing occasionally, but he was a guy who was never really hit quite his stride as effective as he could be at stretches. He could be just as non-effective in stretches as well. So you really have to kind of like lay that into what you're thinking about when you say, okay, well, they had to give up Jose Boo in this case, but I'm not going to lose sleep about it. I mean, he was young, he was under control for a number of years, but they probably weren't going to get anything close to what they're expecting to get out of Tyler Rogers. So keep that in mind. Blake Tidwell and Drew Gilbert, both prospects, are on their way out as well in this trade. So Tidwell, prospect rankings differ like depending on site. He was generally considered one of the Mets' top pitching prospects, not anywhere near their elite three, Sproat, Tong, and McLean, but this is, he was considered a pretty solid guy. Great fastball, elite slider, but the control issues were an issue for him, and he didn't look very effective in his first bunch of appearances at the major league level. 9 ERA, and was just getting murdered repeatedly, and this is a guy who's probably better suited with his arsenal, that great fastball and the slider combination. Yeah, I think very well suited to relief work, not a starting pitcher. And I'm not going to hold on to prospects who don't project as starting pitchers like Tidwell. So I wish him well. I didn't see him as having a particularly great future. Great name, great name, but I'm okay with them parting ways with him. And then Drew Gilbert, and the Gilbert thing is going to rankle some people because Gilbert, who was not considered like a major prospect, he had definitely seen his star dim the last couple of seasons when he arrived to the Mets in the Justin Verlander trade with the Houston Astros. This season, 777 OPS, 243 batting average, 12 home runs. Had a great July, batted 338, 1126 OPS during the month. He was dealing with some hamstring problems last season, and this was probably more than anything roster related. There were reports that they were going to have to probably put him on the 40-man roster, and if he wasn't going to be, then he was going to be Rule 5 draft eligible starting in December. So this was a situation where Gilbert needed to make a decision about Gilbert, and clearly the brass was not very comfortable with the idea of keeping Gilbert around. Gilbert's 24 also. That has to be kind of put into perspective, is that this isn't a PCA issue. This isn't a situation where the Mets are trading like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid who has his entire career ahead of him. Gilbert's 24. I mean, this is like, he is, what you're seeing from him right now is pretty much what you're going to get. He's not going to improve much more than what he is right now. So maybe you consider that sort of a negative thinking about Gilbert. I think we've seen the best of weekends from Gilbert, which is not bad but not great. And he's not Pete Kroger Armstrong. I keep seeing things on Instagram, Reddit, all across the Twitter, all across everything, and it's people being alarmists, and they have nothing to really back this up. This is not a Pete Crow Armstrong situation. It absolutely is not, and I defy you to kind of mash these two people together. It's impossible. So absolutely not. So the rationale for this obviously is add a dependable setup arm for Edwin Diaz here. People thought it was overpay. Trading 3 guys for 1 guy is not an overpay. This is another very frustrating thing when I'm like seeing this stuff for people who do not know what they're talking about. That is the number one thing, is people just talking without knowing what they're talking about is very frustrating. And most outlets, sport outlets, rated the trade as good, not great, but pretty good, depending on what is done with Rogers going forward. Rogers is going to hit free agency. This is a rental, so there is a risk here that they're trading away prospects and a pretty solid reliever in Budo for a guy who most likely will not be around in December unless the Mets decide to keep Rogers around, which, given his age, he's 35. Is going to be kind of a stretch, but definitely is a big move for the Mets here, and I really like the move. I think they desperately needed somebody to kind of close down the eighth inning, and the guys who were in there, Brazaban, Garrett, and Budo, Stanek, those four guys are worked to death. They were absolutely just gas, and you can see it in their eyes. Like, they are just like, they don't have everything left at this point. They need some time to kind of recover, and given the Mets' starting pitching problems that they've had over the last month or so, it hasn't gotten any better. It's increased the workload to increase even more. So I very much am very happy with the idea to bring in a guy like Rogers, who, again, this is not an overpay. You're trading away two prospects, both of whom I don't see any as like long-term pieces for the Mets, and I don't think anyone does either. They're just like concerned about the fact that you're trading away a guy, you're trading away two prospects for a veteran. So it's really alarmist and not productive and not helpful, and I don't like it. So just stop. The other acquisition, obviously, Ryan Helsley. Closer, two-time All-Star with the St. Louis Cardinals. In 2024, he converted 49 saves and 53 opportunities. That was pretty spectacular. He is a guy who is very clutch in late-inning situations. Being asked to move from the closing role to the setup role, obviously not something that he's going to be prepared for, and probably not thrilled about, I would imagine. You're taking chances for him to kind of build up his reputation. He's having a good year. 41 strikeouts over 31 innings. He has converted 21 of 26 save opportunities this year. 3 ERA right on the button, and the numbers are not going to like fly out. They're not like Rogers numbers. The guy does have one of the best fastballs in baseball, and he has just terrific stuff. I mean, the averaging 99 mile an hour fastball puts him in the 99th percentile in terms of fastball velocity. An absolute wipeout slider, great to see. He has really great stuff. He has regressed a little bit in terms of his strikeout whiff rates, the hard hit percentage. The 5 blown saves is definitely out of character for Helsley. So his age, he's 31, and the likely situation is even more so probably than Rogers. Helsley's out here as soon as free agency hits, because he's not going to be interested in setting up Edwin Diaz for the next few years. He's going to be looking at acquiring a deal somewhere in the neighborhood of probably Diaz's deal or Josh Hader's deal, something 9 figures, maybe $100 million for over 5 years, because he has been one of the best closers in baseball these last few years, and it's a terrific addition to the team. And if it's a rental, it's great. The Mets dealt away 3 prospects. Jesus Baez, who was the Mets, again, prospect rankings differ, but he was generally considered somewhere between like 8 and 15 over the course of different prospect rankings. But shortstop, third baseman, middle infielder type of player. Power potential, but nothing that he's shown so far. He's in high A ball at the moment. He's only 20 years old, batting .244, .334, .406 in high A ball, so numbers are not great. And frankly, they don't really have a place for him. This is the issue that they keep running into, is that they have so many middle infield prospects and infield prospects just like lingering around, and they don't have anywhere to bring these guys. They can't. Lindor's not going anywhere at the moment. Ronnie Mauricio seems to have third base locked down, and you factor in Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos kind of floating around. No one really knows where any of these guys are going to go. So having Jesus Baez in there doesn't really make much sense. So my thinking is that Jesus Baez is just dead wood at this point. Just get rid of him. People are interested. Obviously, the Cardinals were interested in Baez, so send him off. The other 2 prospects that would go were not super high ranked. Nate Dome, who was the Mets, again, differing prospect rankings, but they put him at somewhere between number 14, and I've seen him as low as 23 or 22 this year. 4.02 ERA over 62 and 2/3 innings. History of arm injuries. He is not a guy that you can really realistically count on in these cases, and I don't think they really know what to do with Dome. So Adios to him as well. Not that big an acquisition on their part, not that big a risk on the Mets' part. And then finally, Frank Elisalt, I believe is the number. He was not ranked on most people's staff rankings, and it was very low on most people's others. Mid-90s fastball, the command is not consistent. He's in low A ball right now. He's 23. Most people kind of peg him as a reliever. Not expected to be anywhere near the major league level for the next 3-4 years. And the numbers are not great. Yeah, very inconsistent commands. This is I think a slam dunk, even more so than the Rogers deal. This was 3 prospects, none of whom were highly regarded in the system. Send them off. You acquire an established high-velocity arm, and this was just a huge bullpen upgrade for the team. They didn't part with any major prospects, which most people assumed was going to be the case, and the fact that the Phillies had to give up some major prospect capital to acquire Duran, I think makes it even better for the Mets to acquire Helsley, and moving on from these prospects, again, who were not considered particularly high ranked in the Mets system, move on from them and acquire a key veteran. It's great. I think a great move by the Mets, and this really consolidates their bullpen and it makes their way up for a playoff push. They've made a dramatic overhaul with the acquisitions of Rogers and Helsley and Soto. That's totally revamped the bullpen right now. And so the leading alignment right now we can project would be Edwin Diaz, a closer, Brian Helsley and Tyler Rogers, now the newly acquired Helsley and Rogers, setting up. Helsley probably being the primary setup man to Diaz. You have Gregory Soto and Brooks Raley, 2 lefties. Reed Garrett and Ryan Stanek probably making up the the middle relief area. We only know what's going to be the case for Huascar Brazoban, who is just in the middle of a meltdown. He is just completely lost it. Something since June 19th. I believe a 10 ERA, if I read that correctly. It was pretty insane. He has really regressed in a major way, and again, I'm going to put it up to just fatigue. I think he's just really worn out, and the Mets have really asked him to do a lot, like even starting games over the course of the season, with them trying to strategically place starts and wait for starters to come back off the IL. It's been a huge burden on some of these guys, so definitely shortens the games for the Mets here, reducing the burden on their starting rotation. Really critical for their postseason, where they're going to have dominant bullpens. Where if you have a dominant bullpen, I should say, that can really help you preserve your leads and increase their win probability here. So just a really good move on their part. Everybody is under the impression that these are significantly enhancing or improving the Mets bullpen, which is crucial. They are in the middle of a very tight NL East race that they are still, by a miracle, holding on to a half-game lead over the Philadelphia Phillies, and this is going to be a dogfight for the remainder of the season. They are going to be back and forth, this push-pull situation with the Phillies, and they need some key relievers. And the Mets bullpen was considered solid. It was somewhere, I think it was considered 10th or 11th in the majors in terms of ERA. So not terrible, but not great. And you really need a great bullpen if you're going to make any kind of meaningful push here at this point, especially if your starters are not the most dynamic group. So you need some more help. And they just acquired 3 guys who are going to help this team in late situations. So definitely mitigates any of their weaknesses here. It can really overcompensate for their other roster deficiencies in terms of the lineup. Everyone sees this as it's a huge win for the Mets. The long-term implications, of course, are the farm system. They have now dealt away 5 prospects, not including Jose Budo as well. So, Baez, Tidwell, Gilbert are obviously the best 3 of this group. Dome and Elizalde are not considered major prospects, but there is some thinking that Gilbert can be potentially a pretty decent hand in center field for some team. I don't know if it will be for the San Francisco Giants, but there is every indication that Gilbert could be playing at the major league level by next year at the very latest. And Tidwell, we've already seen appearances from him. Again, I think this is a guy who is earmarked for the bullpen duty later in his career. And then Jesus Baez, very raw. No one really knows how this guy's going to pull out, but definitely has power, but they don't really know about the quality of his at bats, and everything like about that says this is a guy that they don't really know what to do with him. So not really a huge risk on their part. So they lose some pitching prospects. They lose a versatile infielder in Baez, but I really don't think it affects them really that much. The Mets are trading prospects with higher risks and injury concerns, and that you have the impending roster complications with Gilbert being Rule 5 eligible, and Budo being a guy that they can't really exist in either world. Really, he's a jack of all trades, master of none. So having a guy like that being traded off doesn't really impact them either. And they did retain their best prospects. They didn't have to trade Jet Williams. They didn't have to trade Jonah Tom. They didn't have to trade Noah McLean. They didn't have to trade Brandon Sprout. All this over and over again has to be said that Stearns really values the top prospects in his system. He clearly sees futures for all these guys. Factor that in also, Steve Cohen, his financial backing, he's acquiring guys, he's willing to pay the tax here for guys who are going to be hitting free agency next year, and every indication being that they're not long-term solutions for this team. These are stopgap moves. Cohen's willing to pay the price here, and it's I think a great signal from the owner that he continues to rely on that he's willing to make these acquisitions, and he's trusting Stearns and the front office not to over rely on his bank account to just keep signing checks for guys later on. So the immediate gains here are going to vastly outweigh any kind of costs, any kind of long-term costs here. So you get an elite bullpen, you get your playoff odds definitely improved. You increase managerial flexibility to give Carlos Mendoza some major weapons out there, and the prospect depletion is negligible, in my opinion. I don't think they've really lost that much, and anybody who thinks that, please feel free to argue with me in the comments here. Just say what you think it is in the case of some of these guys, where you see the long-term futures are, because I don't see a future of a Pete Crook Armstrong and Drew Gilbert, and I don't see anything like that in Blade Tidwell or any of the other prospects that they traded away. So don't be alarmist, please. In this case, they are just going to continue to maximize remaining top prospects and maintaining their financial flexibility here, really leveraging their ability to kind of maintain these future roster gaps. And it's going to do a lot for this team. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do in the next 20-something hours left before the deadline hits. This is huge moves, and they still have to do more, and they've signaled that they are going to do more. I'm keeping my eye on the Mets alerts here and seeing what, if anything, is going to happen. I've got the Jeff Passan Twitter alert on my phone ready to go. I'm waiting and watching for more things to happen. Obviously, they still need something to impact their offense. Center field has got to be the number one position that they have to be looking at in terms of improving. And they've been linked to Luis Robert. I would not prefer Luis Robert. Again, my number one prediction would have been to acquire Harrison Bader. And if anyone had seen my post on Instagram, I floated the idea of trading Tidwell for Bader, among other things. But I would be most interested in them bringing back Bader, and pairing him with this lineup would be a huge improvement for them. They desperately need some offensive help because certain guys are not getting it done, and they need to move on from those guys. And they've signaled that they're willing to do that with the bullpen. Guys like Brazoban and Garrett were doing great for this team early on, and it felt like maybe they had some diamonds in the rough in those cases. But the workload and maybe just familiarity has kind of evened things out. Now those guys look like they are on the chopping block, potentially. We don't know what's going to happen with Brazoban and Garrett and Stanek. Those three guys just went from major roles in the bullpen to kind of being pushed out to this point. We don't really know where they're going to end up, and it's all playing out very interesting. And I'm going to continue my watch, and tomorrow probably posts if the Mets do make any kind of trade updates and acquire anybody of note, then I'm going to release another episode tomorrow. But that'll do me for tonight. So lots to watch out for, and I'm looking forward to the Mets making another big splash over the next day. Thank you for listening to Mike's Mets Podcast. If you haven't already, please follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like and a comment, it helps so much. Finally, please follow our Twitter and Blue Sky pages. You can find us at Twitter at Mike's Mets Pod, all one word, and on Blue Sky at Mike's Mets Podcast.bsky.social. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day or evening, and let's go Mets.